We're
Okay.
good.
Okay, cool. Can everyone see and hear me? I hope.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So, um, as obviously it says, I'm going to talk about UX writing for wireframes. This is really going to build on a lot of what we talked about yesterday. That getting that seat at the table, and then what do you actually do when you're at the table early on? So, without further ado, introduction. So my name is Derek Kedziora, and this is actually my 4th year writing in tech and a year and a half at Wix in Kyiv, Ukraine. And for some sort of, I don't know, bad karma or something, I don't know that I did in the past life, I've done 4 product launches from scratch in a year and a half. So I've had a stressful year and a half. So that's why I think this topic is sort of very close to home for me, because I see, I really base this on what I've done successfully, and also I have a little some failures in here too, and how I've learned from this experience, and hopefully I can share it with. Hopefully it's useful for other writers too. So I think we've all been in this situation, the way it works, like quote unquote, the PMs, they said, I don't know, there's like sort of like smoke-filled back room where they're creating, I don't know, whatever they do, and they send out their wireframes. Then I know there's a little slot that goes to the next room. The designers put some colors and pixels. That's the final design, and then you just, you the writer, you get it, and can you create the final content in 3 minutes, please? And we're going into production in 5. So obviously this works. I've launched many products this way, not at Wix, other companies, and yeah, it works. Like I've gotten product, ideas to products to production, people using them, but I don't think this is the best way to do things. And in fact, we can make much better products. And that's essentially what we're doing here. When we design and write together from the very first wireframe, you get better products. And talking about this, why do we need to be at the table? This is why we get better products. It's, it's not about ego. It's not about some ideological things. It's like, hey, we want to create the best product possible for our customers, for our users. So that's why designing and writing needs to happen together. This is sort of the classic screen of, I love my iPhone. I'm an Apple fanboy, but every time I see this screen, I have a minor panic attack. There's 5 actions here. 2 of them are these complex multi-step actions, and you have like 2 seconds to figure it out. This is, to me, the prime example of a screen that content came last. And one of my like telltale signs of content came last here. Clearly, you have some extra features, like a PM came up. Oh, we need to remind me. We need a message. We need this. These are all cool features, but they're just dumped on here with no like, what do I do next? So it doesn't match the user intent. It's too stressful to pick one of these. So most cases, you see this, I just decline. I have no idea what to do. I get freaked out. So that's why I say content can't save the screen. I think sometimes I joke that like there would be people that would want to say, oh, well, just add a tooltip after end and accept. Maybe you have a link to a knowledge base article. They can read it while they're deciding whether they want to hold or accept. The problem isn't content. This needs to be simplified. Probably get rid of some of the features. Maybe just have hold or decline. It needs to be simplified. But content won't save it by itself. And that's really, it's kind of strange. My reason to be in the room early is to say, hey, I can't do this. And that's what, if the writer is there, the writer can say, no amount of text, no amount of great writing is going to save this flow. We need to do something differently. And why I think these happen is that when contents have dummy text in them, lorem ipsum, even something, I've seen scribbled in wireframes, oh, content writer will write great text here. That's nice. I'm glad they have faith in us, but the assumption is that content will solve a difficult flow. It won't. You can't paper over it. And this idea, we'll just throw in more content, put in a tooltip, a knowledge base article. It's just, there's no concept of like, hey, back up, let's fix the flow, let's fix the design, let's fix the product. And that's why when you use real content in the wireframes, you can't do that. You can't get away with that sort of cheating. And this really brings up what I think is the false dichotomy that, between design and content. There's a lot of times, like, there's almost this, designers want to have this antagonism with us. In real life, I don't see that. A lot of the designers I work with are nice people, and we're still on speaking terms after having worked together. And so really, UX is both content and design, and it's really strange to artificially separate visual design from content design. And then the thing is, we work best when we're in tandem, rather than working one after the other, having passive-aggressive emails about the design doesn't work, or passive-aggressive Slack messages that their content doesn't work. We just need to work. We need to sit next to each other, talk to each other, work together from scratch. Because content is design, design is content. So this is an example of a place where we have all of the right content. I think the content here is fine, but in isolation, even the design is okay. But look at this. So I mean, your eyes are doing this sort of like circle thing. It's you get dizzy if you do this too much. Don't buy too much here, because drop over here, then you drop down, then you go back to see what card you're using, then you go back here. It just doesn't work when you actually read the content. And so this is a successful case of where this was taken and said, look, this design, it's not working. Instead, really simple fix. Put it in a column. Nothing extra. All that stuff, remember above we talked about tax and subtotal. People don't really need to know. They want their total. Hide it. Put it straight line. Boom. Easy to do, easy to read. This works. The problem with this particular flow is that the writer came in late, and the design's already done and development is already done. So it was expensive in terms of development, power, in terms of redesigning it to make this actually better for the user. So the idea is that we get in there early, we can save a lot of time and energy on stuff like this. So this is really kind of I would say in some ways the career arc of a writer. And in some ways, this is how I started too, is that when I came into this job, you start out as the proofreader, the person that just checks, okay, their articles, commas, I'm the only person in the room that speaks English. Let's see if I can write, put two words together. That's nice to get you in the door. And then after that, you kind of become, okay, wow, I'm a content writer. You're thinking in terms of this. Then this next step of this UX writer, that you're starting to take UX principles into account when you write. And then the next level is like, well, wait a minute, I'm actually designing with words, that the way how I put these together affects the whole flow, which then even take the next level is content strategist, where when you're at the very, very early stages, you're deciding what words to pick, what approach to take, how to organize the information. And the goal of this is to take a lot of us that are, in terms of whether it be us personally or in our teams where we work, to move us from the sort of early stages as content writer to take us into content strategists, because again, it makes the products better. So what I think, content strategy really, can be summed up in is that writers need to name or not name the features and products that go into something. And why I really emphasize not naming things is that there's this tendency, I think, dear PM or designer, everything gets a name. But when you do this, you create a lot of overhead for our users. You have this, they have to remember a bunch of new terms that you've created. And it's just, why? Why are you doing this to them? In most cases, you're doing it because, well, it's easier internally to have a name for something. It's easier to say, oh, hey, I did this. It looks nicer on your resume to have a name for what you did. And really, we want to make content strategic, not tactical, in the sense that when you're just in that content writer phase, you get random screens, they're not connected, and you make content that works on an individual screen, but it doesn't work in the whole of the product. And that's, again, where the content strategy comes in. And obviously, the very high level is branding, voice, that you have this consistent tone that, when you think, okay, my company is friendly, it's happy. Okay, do I have that on every page? So, little case study. This is about one of my teams that I worked with called Wix Challenges. And as I say, they are the best product design and content team ever. Because this is where I've seen is the best case of the PM, the designer, and me, the writer. We just sat down, we clicked right away. We worked without ego. We just each contributed. And by doing this, contributing at the same time, at the start, we made some really cool things. So when we made challenges, the idea is that it's an app that someone, like let's say a gym owner, a trainer, a teacher, can create programs, like learning programs for their clients, members, etc. And what happened is when we sat down to make it, we had, the early prototypes is whatever feature we thought was the most technically difficult to implement, that would certainly be the one that we wanted to focus on and make that the first screen of the product, because it was natural. We're sitting in a room, it's developers, it's us, and then so we get, okay, wow, okay, how we have to sort this in terms of, the public, private challenges, we need to put this together. This uses the first screen. And so someone opened the app and this is what they see. Because like suddenly it's out of context, like the social, I just opened up the app. Why are you asking me about something like this? It didn't make sense. It took a lot of text to explain like what's going on here. And so obviously it doesn't work. And even though it's sort of like it doesn't maybe so when I said wireframes, this might look a little bit like it's a design, but we work really quickly in Sketch right away. We actually a lot of times just go straight to Sketch and have something like this, because this is like a 5-minute thing to throw together, super easy to iterate and be like, okay, yeah, no, that doesn't work. So then go to the next one, and we look here. So super important. We had a server developer telling us, without an API call from the beginning, we're not going to be able to figure out what calendar to show people. This is what we have to start with. And it was tempting. It was like, okay, yeah, this is what we need to do. This is the most important thing. But that's not what people are thinking. When you want to create a challenge, you're not thinking about this. Again, look at all of this text. All of this text here, to make it even vaguely comprehensible to a new user, that's a sign something's wrong. So we did eventually fix it on the team. We welcome you with a screen that matches your user intent. We first tell you, this is what a challenge is. Simple, easy, explain what it is. Then we go here. Your first thing that you do, you want to name it. That's every user that I talked to. So what's the first thing you want to do? Well, yeah, I'm going to name it. So hello, put that first. And so all of these questions actually on the form, we did a lot of user interviews to find out that what are people thinking when they create things, when they want to create a challenge, when they want to create a program, and that this is the order, this is how we chose the order. And yeah, we do get the calendar in there, so developers were happy. They got a calendar, pick their APIs, and do whatever they do. And we also met the needs of the user. And notice how these two screens, that this is the whole challenge creation flow. There's less text here than my original welcome screen because it makes sense. So when you match user intent, you can really take out a lot of the text, make it easier to work with. Here's an example of something for me that I would say kind of works. And so this is I wish I had done better. This is for a group. Let's see, you create a group, and privacy is very much like the important thing, right? Like, when I create a group on Facebook, are my parents gonna see, whatever I'm doing, or is a crazy relative, or only my friends? So the issue with this is that now I've created overhead. I've created names. Suddenly there's a type of group. It's a public group, it's a private group. And again, you have to really read these labels to understand what's going on. And so instead, come here, what if I take away the names? It's no longer a private group. It's no longer a public group. Instead, I'm just asking you the behavior of the group. Do you show it? Who can view? You can even take this a step further, and boom, it's now much smaller, much easier to read. Who can view posts? There. And then this actual thing actually covers all three group types. And on the back end, it actually works the same. You have the same thing divisions, but we're able to answer it with one question and then an extra toggle. The benefit of doing this is that now I don't have the overhead and I don't have the legacy when things change. So some new developments in groups are that there are groups that you have to pay to join. There are groups that you have to answer questions to join. And so if you suddenly have you have to go back to these original definitions. Okay, this is a public group, but it's kind of like a private group because you have to answer a question. So it's a half public, half private. So that's why I think when you think of content strategy, it's important to future-proof things. If you can avoid naming something, by all means, avoid naming something. And instead, just make it a toggle. Suddenly it's, anyone can join after they answer a question. Anyone can join after they pay this fee. And then you avoid that whole question. So now, well, you're probably wondering, why am I saying this is like, my failure? I'm embarrassed about this. Because this is an example of something where I came to the late design phase. I was given the final design. I was already in development, couldn't change it. And to this day, we're kind of having this problem. And so this, I think, was an example of, with challenges, the earlier you get in there, you can change things because it's, free, so to speak, when you change it, because it's, half an hour of design time, half an hour of your time to play around. Once you have something that's already in production that a team of 15 people have been working on for a week, it's not realistic to change things, unless there's something dramatic. So the real key here is that when you have real text from the beginning, and it doesn't have to be perfect, you can still make changes down the line, but at least plausible text. Text that, okay, yeah, this can go into production, that you make better products, because now suddenly, your product, your business logic, this fits in perfectly with design and content. Now, all of these are really important things, but we're better when they work together. That really, PM, designer, writer, we need to all sit together, we need to brainstorm together, we need to work together. And then we also get away from this idea that, you know, text is a band-aid. No, text is an integral part of the UX. If you drop the ball on the text, I mean, you're ruining the user experience. And then really the thing is iterate, iterate, and iterate. Is that if nothing you do looks great the first time. I mean, maybe you're a fantastic, I don't know, writer, artist, designer. But yeah, I mean, I can say nothing I've done has looked great my first time I've done it. And when you're in there early, it's so much easier to iterate, and it's so much, you know, everyone's willing to iterate with you when you're not having to change things that are already in production. So thank you, and Yaku from Ukrainian. So that's my take on design. And
okay, wow, thank you, Derek. Yeah, unmute yourself. I forgot about that. Unmute yourself. Give some claps. Let me hear you guys. That was really insightful. A lot of good examples there. Nora, what do you think?
Well, Derek, I think it was absolutely amazing. And I think it hits at the heart of all of us in UX writing, that text needs to be thought about from the beginning. And of course, I think product should be words first. Let's start with the conversation that we want to have with our users, and then build the design around that. So Derek, I'm going to throw it back to you. When you're thinking about real text in a wireframe, if you were to give me a percentage, like how baked should that text be in the final wireframe or tractor?
I think it should it should be plausible, in the sense that if it went to production, it might not be the first thing you put in your portfolio, but you can live with it. You're not going to have a guilty conscience. So, you know, it should be like 80% there, so that in case something happens and it goes to production, you can live with it. But ideally, it should be perfect. But you also need to give yourself, I think, some wiggle room, because if you make something that you think is your masterpiece in that wireframe, then you're not willing to change it later. And, you know, no one ever looks at your text and wants to change it later, right?
Absolutely. I always think we have a great question from the group about, like, how are you also writing for wireframes when you're trying to juggle, you know, 6 or 7 designers and product managers? Is it only you writing for the wireframes, or like who's writing the wireframes, and how much involvement should you expect to be involved as a UX writer?
You know, in the perfect world, there's, you know, one writer, one designer, and we sit and do everything together. And you know, obviously, in the real world, that doesn't happen. So I think it's critical that in early stages, you're together with the writer, the designer, and the PM. That at least setting that content strategy, that these are the words we're going to use, this is the language we're using. At least throw some keywords in there. You know, what are the CTAs? What, you know, is that basic conversation? As long as that's in place, then you can kind of close your eyes, let them do what they're going to do, and then come back and save it a little bit later.
Okay, cool. I know one of the approaches that I always have is try to give each screen a main action. For example, this screen, I want you to go next. The next screen, I want you to save. And then in the next part of the flow, I want you to publish. And I feel that giving even that sort of clarification in an early tractor stage can really go a long way. Now, you're leading a team in Kyiv.
Yeah.
And now when you're thinking about not only creating UX text that is live in production, but also thinking about the type of person that you want to hire that can also really contribute to the wireframing or tractor stage. How has that changed from you, you know, given that's something that, you know, you really want people to be involved in?
It actually really changed when I I started out writing as being the sort of word nerd linguist. I mean, my background is in linguistics and teaching, and so I thought, okay, the perfect writer is someone that's just nerdy beyond belief, gets excited about looking up words in the dictionary. And I realized that that's useful. It's a useful skill, and it's fun to have that sort of the linguistic chops. But now I think really one of the key skills for UX writer is this ability to work on a team and communication, having some feel for design, some understanding of business too. Like, when a PM is asking you to do something, it's not just because, they're crazy. Well, they could be crazy. But when the PM is asking you to do something, they probably have a really good reason for it. It's going to affect, conversions or something. And so understanding where they're coming from, understanding where the designer is coming from. And so being able to be a team player, communication, and really a little bit of humility, I think, is almost like the first things I'd really look for now, more than just sort of raw linguistic chops.
Very cool.